Welcome to the Honorable Minister of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Radio 107.9 FM, respective radio stations island-wide, Tel TV Channel 15 viewers, and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice, Natalie Tacklin, to address you. Minister Tacklin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to my colleague minister, to the members of the press, to CoM, and to all of those viewing and watching at home. I want to begin today by addressing the recent arrest of a minor found in possession of a firearm on a school bus. A weapon in the hands of a child on a school bus is a clear line that should never have been crossed. Gun violence is a serious and growing threat to public safety in St. Martin. It's unacceptable, and we have to take decisive action. As Minister of Justice and the highest authority responsible for upholding the rule of law, I want to make it absolutely clear. This ministry will not tolerate the spread of illegal firearms, nor the culture of fear that they bring with them. The ministry is doing its part, and we expect the same level of commitment from those we serve. Public safety is not the sole responsibility of the government, but it is a collective duty. We're not only enforcing the law, but we're also intervening. Through school resource officers, youth outreach, and close collaboration with the community, we're working to disrupt this cycle before it takes deeper root. Early intervention is key, especially when firearms are ending up in the hands of our youth. However, this issue extends beyond our borders. The rise in gun violence on the French side and our neighboring islands is alarming. We're seeing a troubling regional trend, and we are treating it with the urgency it deserves. St. Martin is actively working with regional partners to tighten border controls, improve intelligence sharing, and strengthen joint operations aimed at stopping the movement and the use of illegal firearms across our islands. To further support these efforts, we've extended the Stop, Drop, and Go gun amnesty program until May 16th. This program allows anyone possessing an illegal firearm to hand it in safely and anonymously, no questions asked. If you know someone with a weapon, I encourage you to tell them to do the right thing. Every firearm surrendered is one less threat to public safety. Beyond the Stop, Drop, and Go amnesty program, we're strengthening investigative capacity, deploying specialized units, and working hand in hand with the prosecutor's office to ensure that those responsible for gun-related crimes are identified, prosecuted, and removed from our streets. As crime evolves, so does our response. I also want to express our support to the Indian Merchant Society, or the Indian Merchant Association, and the members who have been directly affected by recent events. The business community is a vital pillar of our society, and we stand firmly behind your right to operate in a safe and secure environment. A meeting will be scheduled with the IMA to listen to your concerns and explore how the ministry can further strengthen safety and protection for the business sector. On this topic, I want to end with saying that St. Martin is not defined by its challenges, but we are defined by how we respond to them. On a lighter note, this weekend, the Ministry of Justice Cabinet will join hundreds of citizens for St. Martin Doot. We'll be on the ground working shoulder to shoulder with volunteers, not just as a gesture, but as a clear demonstration of leading by example and commitment. Community involvement is a vital part of crime prevention. When we come together as a community, we become stronger, safer, and more resilient to the forces that threaten us. I wanted to close by also making note of a breakfast meeting that I had the honor of attending with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, specifically to discuss justice matters within the kingdom and how we can work more collaboratively together. I welcome that opportunity, and I'm happy to exploring further how we can work together as a whole kingdom to have a whole kingdom approach to what is happening. I don't think that the incidents in St. Martin are unique to St. Martin. We're definitely feeling what is happening in our, with our sisters and brothers across the region. If we look at incidents happening in Anguilla, if we look at the French side of the island, we look at Tortola, this has our full attention. And I look forward to collaborating further within the region, learning from one another intelligence sharing, as I said, and starting to make all of our streets safer together. So that will be all for my remarks. And of course, I'm available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Tacklin, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Finance, Marinka Gums, to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika, fellow colleague ministers, members of the press, and to the people of St. Martin, good morning and blessed day to all. I would like to take this opportunity to provide you with important updates on several key matters. Budget 2025. As it relates to the 2025 budget, as I stated during Parliament last week, I will be returning in May 2025 with a version that includes only the 7 modifications and amendments already approved by Parliament. Last week, we received the advice from the Council of Advice, and we are doing our utmost to have the budget finalized and submitted to Parliament by the end of this week. As Minister of Finance, would I have preferred to return to Parliament with a more extensive amended budget for the year 2025 at this time of the year? Yes. However, when I previously stated in Parliament that I intended to return in June 2025 with a slightly amended version, several members of Parliament raised concerns and objections. In the interest of time, and while this government still plans to submit a broader budget amendment later this year, I have chosen to return now with this version that Parliament has already approved. The issues surrounding these amendments were not something I could have foreseen, and together with the relevant stakeholders, we explored various options to address the matter. At this point, returning with this budget previously approved with the incorporated 3 memorandum of modifications from government and the 4 amendments approved by Parliament is the most efficient way to have the budget passed and enacted quickly, also taking into account the inclusion of the emergency clause. I hope this decision is understood and that we can reserve extended parliamentary debate for the upcoming Budget Amendment 2025. Income tax filing 2024. The filing deadline for income tax returns for the year 2024 is currently set for June 30th, 2025. As promised, I committed to organizing informative sessions throughout the year, not only during Financial Literacy Month. In that context, the Ministry of Finance is hosting 2 free educational workshops to provide step-by-step guidance on how to complete your income tax return. This is one of the most attended sessions during Financial Literacy Month. I am pleased to announce a special session exclusively for civil servants, which will take place on Wednesday, June 4th, 2025, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. In addition, there will be a workshop on Wednesday, June 11th, 2025, also from 6 to 8:30 p.m., which will be open to the general public. Both sessions will be held in Room 1 at the Government Building and are designed to support taxpayers in navigating the process and ensuring timely and accurate filings. The invitation and registration link will be published by the end of this week on government's Facebook page. I urge everyone to register as soon as possible, as space is limited. The session will be given by our very own tax assessment officer, Mr. Marlon Quidama, who will provide practical step-by-step guidance. In addition to these sessions, we will also be releasing a digital video tutorial, which will be accessible to everyone and will focus specifically on how to fill in your income tax form. Tax Tables 2025. The tax tables for the year 2023 were published in December 2024, and those for 2024 were published in March 2025. I am pleased to announce that the 2025 tax tables are expected to be published next week. This marks progress in my effort to catch up and ensure that tax tables are published on time ahead of the start of the new fiscal year. As communicated before, the failure to publish updated tax tables in prior years resulted in many employers continuing to use the 2022 tax tables during the years 2023 and 2024, leading to excess tax withholdings from employees. I am currently reviewing how we, as government, can accelerate the processing of tax filings, particularly for those in the lower tax brackets who are most affected. This matter has my full attention, and I will provide an update on how we plan to ensure that these individuals do not have to wait extended periods to receive their tax refunds. I urge everyone to file their tax returns for the year 2023 and 2024 to ensure timely processing and refunds. Vacation pay, civil servants. This question has come up many times, and I want to state clearly that all civil servants will receive their 8% vacation allowance in June 2025. Next week, both the Prime Minister and I will return to Parliament for the public meeting on the increase of the vacation allowance. To civil servants, I want to be transparent. The 8% will be paid out in June 2025. Retroactive payment of 2% indexation. Regarding the 2% indexation, which will be applied retroactively as of January 1, 2025, after the May 2025 salary payment, the salary scales will be updated to reflect the 2% increase. As of June 2025, civil servants will begin receiving the adjusted salary with the 2% included. The retroactive amount covering the period January to May 2025 will be paid out in July 2025. This timeline allows the Wages and Salaries Department sufficient time to perform the necessary manual calculations and ensure accuracy and payment for all civil servants. As such, in June, the vacation allowance will be paid out, and in July, the retroactive 2% indexation for the period January through May 2025 will be paid out. Vacancy, Head of Tax Office. As of August 1st, 2025, the position of Head of the Tax Administration will become vacant. To ensure a smooth transition and continued progress, I have engaged SOAB to assist with this recruitment. The vacancy will be officially published in the coming weeks as it is currently being reviewed. We encourage all interested, qualified candidates to apply. We also ask the public and relevant stakeholders to help share the vacancy once it is published. The tax office is undergoing a major transformation, including the tender and implementation of a new tax system. Strong leadership will be critical to its success, and we are committed to finding the right person for the role. Collection policy. As I have stated on several occasions, the collection policy at the Receiver's Office remains a top priority. We are currently updating the policy to create greater efficiency for both tax employees and taxpayers. My aim is to have the updated collection policy finalized and published by July 2025. Refinancing of loan, 73 million Caribbean guilders. Lastly, I would like to provide some clarity regarding the refinancing of the 73 million government loan. St. Martin has consistently remained compliant with its loan obligations, both interest and principal repayments on outstanding loans that are made on a yearly basis. We have been compliant to date, and we fully intend to continue honoring our commitments. However, there is one particular bullet loan of 73 million Caribbean guilders originating from prior to 10-10-10, which is scheduled to mature in October 2025. A bullet loan means the full principal amount, the entire 73 million, must be repaid in one single payment at maturity. The reality is that St. Martin is not in a financial position to repay this full amount at once. For that reason, the 2025 budget already includes the refinancing of this loan. I want to emphasize that this is not a new development, nor is it based solely on a recommendation from the CFT. This is a matter that St. Martin has long been aware of and has communicated clearly with both the CFT and the Netherlands. I understand that some may ask, Why didn't the government save annually to repay this amount? It is a fair question. However, I want to remind everyone that during the COVID-19 pandemic, St. Martin was borrowing just to cover the normal operations of government. As such, saving annually to repay this loan was simply not possible during this period. Any reserves or savings that may have existed prior were utilized during that time, as the primary focus was on keeping the country functioning amidst an unprecedented global crisis. It's also important to remember that Hurricane Irma in 2017, just a few years before the pandemic, had already placed significant financial strain on the government's resources. As a result, we have not, as a country, yet been able to build sufficient reserves to pay such a large amount, 73 million guilders, in a single payment. That is precisely why refinancing is the most realistic and responsible course of action at this time. Given the current financial situation, refinancing this bullet loan is necessary, and a formal request has been made to that effect. I hope this explanation gives the public with greater clarity on this matter. Conclusion. Thank you for your attention. As Minister of Finance, I remain committed to being transparent. I will continue to provide regular updates as we move forward on these important matters and welcome any questions you may have. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment, and Infrastructure, Patrice Gums Jr., to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Good morning to my colleague ministers, members of the press, and the viewing and listening public. We start off very quickly with the swamp kickoff. We are pleased to announce the official kickoff of the St. Martin Wastewater Management Project, or commonly referred to as SWAMP, under the World Bank Trust Fund, Recovery and Reconstruction Trust Fund of St. Martin. This is a major infrastructure project that will improve sanitation, protect public health, and help preserve our environment. By June 2028, SWAMP is envisioned to deliver over 700 new household connections, reaching approximately 6,300 residents. This is part of our official commitment in the results framework, which targets 720 households connections in total. SWAMP is a multi-year investment that will lay or rehabilitate about 15 kilometers or 9 miles of sewer lines, install household connections to the public sewer system, and upgrade the ATLH Road wastewater treatment plant to handle the additional flow. The project also includes technical assistance to the Ministry of Rummy and support for developing a national sanitation strategy. SWAMP is backed by a total investment of $25 million, running from 2024 to 2028. This includes a $10 million grant from the St. Martin Trust Fund and $15 million in counterpart financing from the government of St. Martin. The first phase will focus on the Greater Cul-de-Sac Basin, and it's important to note that if bids come in below the estimate or if we secure additional funding, we plan to expand towards Greater Phillipsburg and along the ATLH Road and Lower Princess Quarter corridors as well. Right now, we're in design phase, and work is moving forward in line with the project appraisal document and the design and supervision terms of reference. In short, this project is about building a cleaner, healthier, more resilient St. Martin. We will continue to provide updates as progress continues and wish to share a fact with you that only 15% of St. Martin is currently connected to the existing sewer treatment plant. This project really aims to correct that and enhance as well connectivity. On the topic of the Bell private property, regarding the recent installation of the private property signs on the Bell Lookout Point, discussions were held with the owners, and it's understood that the signs were placed to remind the public that the property is indeed private and to exercise caution and respect when visiting, as there were incidences of abuse and misuse. In addition to this, the original agreement on the flag pole, valid from 2017 to 2022, is going to be reviewed. A letter will be sent to the owners related to the future agreement of the site and other matters around safety, security, and access in the area. On the terms of reference for stormwater pumps, I am pleased to provide an important update to one of the ministry's critical infrastructure initiatives. As part of our €1.9 million subsidy secured earlier late last year from the Dutch government, we have now officially published the terms of reference for the procurement of new stormwater pumps. This marks a significant step towards our efforts to strengthen the country's resilience to flooding and improve overall stormwater management. Our total funding, €500,000, has been specifically allocated for this purpose, underscoring the priority we place on safeguarding our community, especially during heavy rainfall events. The terms of reference outlines all technical specifications, bidding processes, and submission requirements. We're encouraging all qualified contractors to participate in this bidding process. The document is now available on the government's website under Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure Ministry, Public Tenders tab. This initiative is not just about infrastructure, it reflects our ministry's ongoing commitment to delivering targeted improvements and utilizing funds efficiently and transparently. We will continue to keep the public informed as we move through the various phases of this project. I want to thank the team at VROMI and the diligence and the Dutch government for their continued partnership. On the next topic, I wish to inform everyone of the closure of Walter A. Nisbeth Road, commonly called Pondville, which will take place on the night of Sunday, May 18th, from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Monday, May 19th. This is, of course, linked to the need to put road markings on the road following the successful Phase 1 paving of the road from the traffic lights to the beginning of Office World. This again will take place this coming Monday, May 19th, from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. Monday morning. Please be aware there will be a press release coming out shortly with alternative routes provided. Please prepare. The alternative route is, of course, going to be Canagita Street, but please be aware of this, as we are very aware that when we closed Simpson Bay, not everybody respected the rules about using the causeway. Many people attempted to still come down the road and then complain after that they had to turn around when they knew it was closed in advance. So please keep an eye out for that. Again, Sunday, May 18th, the road will be closed for road markings. Finally, regarding permits and associated costs, it has come to my attention that the practice of asking developers, both local and foreign, small and large, for bribes to execute permits continues. I want to remind any developer that there are two fees to be paid in the permit process. One, the processing fee, and two, government contributions, which are clearly listed on your permit. Any other fees asked of you are illegal and should be reported to the public prosecutor. Since taking office, I have made several attempts to address not only backlog and cohesion within the ministry, but also the image of the ministry. The systematic requesting of bribes continues to damage the reputation of the ministry and the aim of this mission. Withholding and delaying the processing of permits and asking for bribes will not be tolerated any longer. To all civil servants engaged in this practice at any level, please be aware this is illegal and grounds for immediate termination. Thank you, and I welcome any questions you may have in future in this press briefing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. Thank you for joining us. We now move on to the question and answer session, and Bibi Hadshaw of SMN News, you have the floor. Kindly indicate which minister you'd like to have at the podium.
Good morning, Relaika. Good morning, colleagues, ministers. I see Minister Gums, Patrice, you're having the flu, some cough, but I need you.
I'm here.
I need you, Minister Gums. Yesterday afternoon, if you may have noticed, I did an interview in Cole Bay, specifically Manjack Drive. Minister, I know this is a situation you inherited, so let's cut to the chase because I know you're going to tell me this, but government is about continuity. Since taking office a year ago, you have issued 2 building stops, if not 3, none of which have been respected. Why not take the same jackhammer you used on the project in Kupakoy on this Italian businessman that have stopped you from paving the road there? And under what circumstances was this permit issued? Because a local, the owner of that land prior, requested a building permit for over 20 years, waited, never got one, sold the land, and an Italian developer now got the land, and then you can see the situation there. A fire truck cannot even go up there to render assistance in the event of a fire. What are you doing about this?
Thank you, Bibi. I'm very happy that everybody is kind of waking up now to what I've been saying for a very long time about how permits are issued, the terms in which they're issued in. Let me just give a little bit of context because it's something we have been working with the family affected for quite a few months now on Manjack Drive. Several things. This permit was issued, indeed, not by my person. And in reviewing the file, we found that there were some indications from the different persons in the permit process indicating that this building is going to be too big for the parcel of land that it's on. Regardless of this, the permit was still issued. And what ended up happening in the process now, there was a building stop ordered, drafted, I believe about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, that was not issued. In coming into office, I signed the stop order. And when it became a warning. Why? Because in fact, what the developer did was actually they made their building smaller than what was originally suggested in their permit. So what happened then is that they reduced the size of the building, leaving about 1.5 meters of extra road space available. Within the terms of what is allowed in terms of a width of a road, the road is still too narrow by the typical government VROMI standards to pave a road. Thus, that was the initial reason why in the processing of this project, the road could not be paved. When investigating the situation, we understood now that the road is actually indeed wider. We are going to, of course, pave the road. We've already spoken to the family about this. We actually sent the cadastre and the VROMI team about 2 months ago down to remeasure the entire property. Indeed, the space is still small, but what we have to now do is work with what we have. It's quite unfortunate because these are the continued things that we speak about. And, people only seem to kind of resonate with this once it goes on social media. We've been saying this for some time. There's a reason why I keep preaching the need to stick to what the general guidelines of building are. Zoning laws, zoning regulations, they're not law, but they've been governing how we kind of advise within VROMI. Because in the end of the day, someone signs a permit a year ago, 5 years ago, it becomes a continuation of government's problem to solve now. But rest assured, we are working. I'm awaiting the final report on the remeasuring of that property, which took place, as well as the timeline for when we're going to go back to intervene to start the paving of that road. And as well, we are looking into a number of different properties around the island where we're receiving a lot of complaints because everybody has been observing a lot of construction over the past couple of years and seemingly only now coming forward to the media with these concerns. And it's very unfortunate because a lot of the interventions and stops could have been done months ago, years ago, and now towards the end, we're seeing the impact of bad governance and bad decision making and the impact on both local and foreign investors. Because what's very interesting to me is that this exact same situation is what we are having in other developments. Be it foreigner or local, once something impacts someone's quality of life, it's wrong. Are the permits correct? That's a station passée. Again, as I indicated in Parliament, there's 2 reasons to withdraw a permit. One, if a permit is not worked on within a year, or 2, if you actually are building outside your permit norms. So with that, pulling back a permit again is very challenging. What we're trying to do is remedy the situation as best we can, and we are, of course, going to try our best to address the issue on Manjack Drive to ensure access. Indeed, a fire truck can pass. It fits very tightly. There is concerns around the long-term development of that entire area because there's a few homes in the vicinity of that building now, but as we continue to develop and build more, what is the impact going to be on the size of the road that you're going to have for the big development happening? So again, it's just to stress the importance of sticking to what we know are the norms and rules of good governance, listening to the advice of your ministry, in my case, VROMI, assessing it very well balanced, and also making the right decisions, and also respecting what is in those draft zoning laws. Because a lot of what we're seeing over the last couple of months coming out now is really the cause of not having followed what we know is on paper for what should be where it is. Yeah. So with that, with Manjak Drive, no, with the family, we have been in contact. They're very frustrated, and I can understand, because I wasn't aware of the fact that the person had asked 20 years ago for a building permit. I understood that they were told that the land was too narrow to develop, and somehow now we have a permit for the same amount of land. Something to investigate, but rest assured, to the residents of Manjak Drive, we've had several conversations, very, very passionate people, and I can understand the frustration. Because again, it's impacting, this one singular project is not only impacting the residents nearby, it's also going to impact long-term development of that entire area in terms of access and safety.
Can you tell me what measures were taken because the building stops issued were not respected?
Mm-hmm. So
because even the porch that he built recently, this was done during a building stop.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So one of the things that we found when visiting the site was basically the if you look at the road in itself, the developer actually made the building much smaller. So the bound of where his land is actually 1.5 meters further into the road. I've had discussions with the family again, asking them, do you have a road here? Do you have an access way? Oftentimes what we find when it comes to succession lands is that people have tracts of land and they eventually develop a road themselves, when in reality, it's not necessarily supposed to be a road, it's a right of way. So that they do have access to a road in their property. But again, the property which he owns, based on this, does go directly into the road, and he's actually pushed back 1.5 meters off the road. The building stop issued, it has to do with the fact that what he submitted to was a 2-story building, and what he has now gone to try and do is to do preparatory works for potential 3rd story, which is not at all in the building permit issued, and that's when the stop order came in to stop that development from happening. So he has to cap at 2 stories. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Bibi. I would now like to invite Emil Lee of Island Nature Radio. You have the floor.
My question's for the Minister of Finance. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a copy of an IMF report from September of 2024. Mm-hmm. And so I'm referring in particular to revenues for short-term rentals, or as they would consider, as we've been discussing, Airbnbs. Mm-hmm. And they estimate that there's a lost revenue of about 0.3% of GDP per year, which works out to $3.55 million, and a loss of about 1% in total tax potential. So this is just government tax revenue. Mm-hmm. Of 11.85. So that's a total of $15.4 million in lost tax revenue because government has not tackled the short-term rental market and have them pay their fair share, which also undercuts the regular businesses that are paying their taxes. You've spoken in the past about an Airbnb committee. I still have not heard anything about something being active. Can you update us on your plans to go after this money?
Thank you so much for your question. Indeed, a significant loss for the coffers of the government of St. Martin. And because of that, we have already started with a work group. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I believe we had one session last week that they're now busy sitting down with not only finance, but also the Ministry of TIAT, and as well as other stakeholders such as the SHDA, who is a part of this work group to help us go after this much needed revenue. I can give you an update once we meet once again as to what is the course of action going forward. But I know that they did meet, I believe it was last week, if I'm not mistaken. And it's very necessary that we do go after this. loss in revenue.
So just for clarity, the tourism tax requires a legislative change, where going after the lost revenue is an enforcement issue and not a legislative issue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums. Thank you, Emil. I would now like to invite Jacqueline Hoffman of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister of Rome. Minister, the pre-sale, pre-construction sale on the island in Kupkoi, there are apartments offered pre-construction whereby the buyers are required to pay directly to the companies instead of through a notary. In Beacon Hill also there is a billboard of a new apartment building, 12 apartments, and it is stated that 8 already are sold. While this person doesn't have a building permit, but you recently gave demolition permit. Why is that? And also the pre-sale, does that have any influence of the granting of a building permit? Like in the case with Villa Sasha, the court has now ordered that you have to take a new decision. Sasha will claim that they already sold apartments for this unbuilt building. Will that influence your decision to then again grant a new permit?
Thank you for the question. And just if you can clarify to me the demolition for Kupokoi. This is Anush talking about. Okay, we'll come back to that. Now remember. Let me just address first the question regarding the influence of pre-sales on my building permit decisions. Absolutely not. Doing a pre-sale and constructing, the same thing. Pre-sales, constructing before you have your building permit, that's all at risk of you, the developer. It's important to know that formally you're not even supposed to start building before you have a building permit. It's a very common thing that happens that we say, okay, we submit a building permit, that fingers crossed that we will be getting approval. That's not the case at all. I think we've been having discussions around the idea of pre-construction because any sort of pre-construction gives the impression to a developer, to a potential buyer, that all permits are in place and everything is okay. If you don't have a permit, that's not the case at all. When it comes to the idea of what's going to happen with Villa Sasha in particular, again, it boils down to what I said. What does the zoning for that area say? Beacon Hill is supposed to have single-family homes which have a certain height requirement, and as such, based on what the court has said, whatever is done there has to be in line with that draft zoning law, as well as the planning permit for Beacon Hill. So whatever is going to be approved has to match that. If there are any sort of damages or losses that are occurred by a developer, if they choose to take government to court, government will then find itself in a position to go to court, and I will personally hold liable the foreign minister who has taken the decision to go against what is written in black and white in not only the draft zoning laws, but also in the planning permit for Beacon Hill. When it comes to the discussion around the demolition permit for the Westview project, going back again to the fact that the area itself is zoned for a single-family home. What we have seen is that the court, in our injunction filed by the developer, has upheld that that discussion does not revolve itself around the building permit for the development itself. The injunction really lies with the problem of how do you actually develop and use the land. Thus, what has happened is that we have, as promised to the court, worked very closely to make sure that the proper permits are in place for that, those civil works permits. And we've issued yesterday, a day before, I've signed, they haven't been issued yet. I signed 2 days ago the 3 civil works permits for that area that involves excavation, felling of trees, and the demolition of the house that was demolished, already demolished, indicating as well where all the material is going to go and the timeline it's going to take to have those things done. Again, the question goes back to, I guess, Why are we issuing building permits? Because the court case we were faced with didn't deal with the development itself. Of course, in the developers placing an injunction, filing an injunction on government, all interested parties could have joined the injunction. The affected persons did join the injunction to also sort of repropose their arguments as well. And the court basically ruled that from government side, we had to basically issue, work towards civil works permits. They indicated that the position we took to stop the works was legally sound, and thus the activity was civil works permits for the development that has a permit approved for already.
Can I ask a clarification?
Sure.
When you went to Westview, you saw that the developer was excavating within 2.5 meters, the minimum of 2.5 meters of the borders, within a meter actually. So now that you approve the excavation permit, does that mean that they can continue to be so close to the retaining walls and to the building? Yeah, can you explain why and how this civil works permit?
Yes. So basically, civil works permit gives the sort of the ground plan for how they use the land, and that's exactly why I'm trying to clarify. I'm not able to actually, based on this injunction, touch anything with the building permit. There's two reasons I indicated earlier to stop a building permit. One, unexecuted within a year, and two, not following the building permit. The issues now, that's what the court also indicated, the injunction deals exclusively with the lack of civil works permit and how the area is being managed, where all the material is going to go, particularly because we understood a lot of it was being improperly dumped somewhere else. The civil works permit basically supports the project execution, which, based on the court's discussion, was not a part of the subject of this injunction. So in long story short, the permit still stands unless, of course, somebody wants to take the developers again to on this on a legal basis. But the permit itself for the development still stands for Westview. My role is was to make sure that the procedures to have this development happen were put in place as required by the law and as supported by the injunction's ruling.
But you know that there were 2 houses that were demolished and that there is a parcel included that they have no building permit for.
So there's several parcels in this development, and if you go through the entire package, there's 4 parcels, of which the development itself is on what it was originally the parking lot. And then this is what is all in the building permit, in the civil works permits that are coming out within the next National Gazette issue.
Sorry,
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Jacqueline. We will now move on to the final round, or the second round. Bibi Hodge, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. I'd like to have the Minister of Finance. Minister Gums, it has come to my attention that Soul Beach has requested tax exemption on ticket sales. Can you tell me if this tax exemption was granted and if it was also granted for SCDF, the recent carnival?
Thank you so much for your question, Bibi. I can confirm that there was a request on behalf of Soul Beach for a tax exemption specifically on TOT. That advice came in, I believe it was yesterday or definitely this week. It was a negative advice, and I am going to uphold that negative advice. As for SCDF, there was no request to my knowledge on TOT or any other tax exemption.
Thank you, Minister Gums. Thank you, Bibi. Emil, you have the floor, and you can also pose your follow-up question.
So I will first ask my Minister of Finance question and then a clarification to Vromi. So when I'm going through some of the articles about the debt of St. Martin, right, I'm seeing that there's statement is that the debt to GDP ratio has approached 49% when a sort of a threshold is 53%. So 49% of our GDP adds up to $580 million as debt that St. Martin owes. Can you give breakdown on that? Not today, obviously, but would you send us an update? Because things like the money owed to SZV, it's hard to know what's in. Does it include debts of government-owned companies? So if you could give us a bit of an overview of that. And then, so when you speak about a bullet loan, meaning that so I guess that means interest is paid, but the principal is not paid. It's a lump sum payment at the end. But it means your annual budget, if you're not accruing for the bullet loan for the final payment, means you're always structurally going to have a financial problem when debts come due.
Correct. Emil, I totally agree with your statement or your question, and I will be more willing to come with the breakdown for you. I will be sending that in writing so that you can have a full outline as to our full debt and how it's covered, etc. And of course, moving forward, how do we take into account, like I stated in the press statement earlier, all of our other loans we have been on time with, but these bullet loans is something that, we cannot or did not structurally take into account or have reserves for, knowing that you had COVID, you had a Hurricane Irma back in 2017. But I believe, though, that even if we had money reserved, it would have gone towards those more significant situations at the time. But look forward to my email on the structure. And I think it's very important not only for you as media to understand it, but maybe I can come with an additional press briefing so that I can give a breakdown to the wider public as well.
Thank you. And my clarification question to Minister Romy, if I understood the statement from my colleague that developers are collecting deposits for pre-sales, I understood that the laws changed not too long ago where pre-sales were much more regulated in order to no problem.
Can we just provide Minister Gums with one moment?
Okay.
Okay. Apologies.
No problem. So I understood that the legislation changed a couple years ago about how pre-construction financing was permitted. And my colleague, if I understood correctly, mentioned that the pre-financing deposits were not made through a notary. And I understood that that was a fairly regulated structure now to prevent that projects go bankrupt and buyers lose their deposits. Is that true? And who regulates that? Who oversees that pre-financing finance structure?
Yeah. So this is something I mentioned just before I started, was that we are in fact looking into this pre-construction and sales and pre-financing options. Allow me just maybe till next week to give you a full story, but it is something we've been having discussions on because we've seen already where these pre-construction constructions sort of cause a lot of, one, kind of somewhat false stories given to potential buyers, but also two, that oftentimes what you see is that people pre-finance to kind of cover costs they don't actually have in financing at all. It really becomes that projects in construction run over, you don't have enough, or they're busy using that pre-finance to finish off another project they're also working on, which is a Ponzi scheme. So something to also we're looking into to kind of regulating that. There, in fact, has been a lot of discussions around that and regulatory efforts on it. So I'd like to give you a full story on it next week, Wednesday, if that's possible. Let me just also clarify a couple of things regarding who you report instances of bribes to. I think it's very question. In my opening, I said to send to the prosecutor. Just a brief correction. Actually, all complaints should be directed to the police, and of course, if it involves a civil servant, to the Landsrecherche. And then secondly, too, on that, I also want to clarify that with regards to Westview, what government won was the injunction. That was about a month or so ago, 2 months ago, to which basically it was decided that indeed they had to file for civil works permit. What ended up happening is that the developers also filed a court case around the same time. So that court case is May 16th. Essentially, we'll be proposing the same exact information as the injunction. and we will see the outcome of that as well. But given that the injunction, we will see how the injunction will influence, if at all, the court's decision and the fact of where we are at now in the process of the civil works permits as well.
Thank you, Minister Gums. Thank you, Emil. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Thank you. One clarification about the Westview. There's a fifth parcel that was not listed on the building permit, but that is within the excavation area. But my question is about, you sent the letters to Jordan Road 12. That is not the address of the developer. They're using the address of, without permission, of the homeowners. In the same way, the Lagoon Bay is using the address of the Cassava Coalpot restaurant on Sucker Garden Road as the address for their head office. So is it possible that anybody in St. Martin one day can find out that their address is used by a developer and that they are registered at the Chamber of Commerce on their address, and that government is then sending letters to that address, like you're doing now?
Yeah. So in the case of a few of these, because I've seen a number of these come across my desk in reviewing a couple of files, what you oftentimes see is that persons actually use the law firm or the office of the developer or the contractor of the project as the address for the project. Oftentimes it's because the principal is the one who's executing on behalf of. I think what's very important, we've been reviewing this, particularly after what we saw with Ville Vent project, where in fact they use the address of their legal person for the permission for a number of things. That actually is incorrect. You actually have to use the address of your site, of where your project is, particularly when it comes to the ability to review and give complaints about a project. Because if I'm looking to complain about a project that's in Coal Bay and an address is in Dutch Quarter, I'm going to go to Dutch Quarter, not Coal Bay, to see how the impact is. And a person who's going to be impacted might not necessarily know that this is happening next to them, but somewhere else. That's also important to recognize that what happened in that instance was incorrect. I'm not sure exactly what the address is supposed to be for that development in particular. I have to check back my files, top of my head, but the use of any address outside of what is the actual address of the place is not correct. People are supposed to have correct addresses to be able to properly review what is in their file as part of the process for permits.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Jacqueline. We now move on to the final round. Members of the media, we do only have 6 minutes, so I will allow one question per media person. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you. Minister of Justice, please. Good morning, Minister. The Point Blanche prison expansion. Can you give us an update on the hiring of the contractor and consultants? I find there isn't much transparency or information coming out about this prison expansion, so and as well as the LBs, as to when exactly you are going to start distributing the LBs for justice workers.
That was 2 questions about 2 very different topics. But when it comes to the prison construction project, indeed, I think I had previously mentioned in a press briefing that we had a slight delay when it came to the tendering process. And since then, we've had to revise the tender to a different type of RFP process that is ongoing. Of course, UNOPS is taking lead in that with some collaboration with the ministry. So right now we are in the midst of, I believe there was a site visit last week or the week before with potential contractors coming to assess the situation and see so that they can prepare their proposals. So that RFP process is ongoing, and we're hoping then for bid selection and awarding of the contract by the end of the summer. So let's say end of July, I believe, is the new timeline. And then we're hoping, fingers crossed, to begin construction in October of this year. And so that is that process that is going there. In terms of other processes going on, I think by now it was 2 years ago, maybe even longer than that, the ministry received a subsidy from the Netherlands in order to get support for that project. And primarily that money was given to the NRPB to then have to source 2 individuals to work. One would be a program lead, and one would be we're working within the ministry, and then we would have a project lead up at the prison to assist with that process. So far with the project lead, we've been unsuccessful on recruiting somebody, but when it comes to the program manager, we did just finish off that entire interview process, and a candidate came out of that. And I believe that right now NRPB is in the final phases of negotiation with that individual, so I can't give that information out. But sometimes in this process, it's been sometimes slower than we would like. But we are making steps, and we're still on course and hoping that phase 1 of the prison reconstruction will be completed by the end of next calendar year. So by the end of 2026, which would mean that after phase 1, we would go from 80 available spaces to 120, so that we would have some extra capacity. But that, of course, won't mean that from one day to the next we have 40 more spaces. Of course, it becomes a question of how can we actually utilize that space. So those are discussions that are ongoing now, because that also has a staffing impact as well. When it comes to the LBA process, I had an extensive parliament meeting last week where I explained what the process was, where we are, and what the timelines are going forward. When it comes to the LBAs at the prison, the idea right now is that the rest of the ministry, meaning everybody besides the Point Blanche prison, will be handled in batches 14 and 15. And that after that, we will do the entirety of the Point Blanche prison as one, so that everybody will receive their placement at the same time there. Because I want to avoid what we've seen in other departments where, you have your colleague has it and you don't, and then you still get disparity within the organization. So that is my update there. And I'm hoping, again, to have the entire phase 1 of the LBA process, because there's phase 1 and phase 2 is all the retroactive from pre-2023, from the day from 10/10/10 up until the 31st of December 22. Phase 1, I'm aiming to have complete by Q4 of this year.
Thank you, Minister Tacklin. Emil?
I'll keep my question short for Romy. So my question, we've received quite some comments from people about the sailboat on the beach in Simpson Bay. The sailboat is deteriorating, and pieces of fiberglass are ending up on the beach, and hurricane season's approaching. It really seems that they're completely frustrated why this takes so long to remove what's clearly a hazard.
Yeah, several things. And thank you for that question, because I've received a couple of follow-up questions as well as to why it's taking so long, several reasons. It has to do with legal. What's very important to note is that VROMI removed the boat in Great Bay because of the fact that there was a urgent impact, particularly with regards to the cable that runs under bed. That process takes quite a long time for government to go and pick up someone's boat. We have to take ownership of the boat. We have to also establish the person. We have to get permission from the person to actually pick up the boat. I know a lot of people think it's very easy to just go out and pick up car wrecks, pick up boat wrecks, pave roads, dig up roads. I operate in a place where I try to mitigate my risks. It's frustrating. I think a lot of the issues we're having is that the current owner, we know who he is. We finally narrowed that down. It's a question basically of the willingness to actually give up the power of the boat, because he has to actually formally relinquish that power of the giving of the boat for us to take the boat. And that's what we're trying to finalize for sure before the hurricane season picks up, ideally by the end of this month. There's also a number of challenges that if VROMI picks up the boat, we have to either pick up the boat in its entirety, or we have to crush the boat on the beach, which also creates an element of fiberglass fragments in sand. So all these discussions are happening, and I can imagine it's very frustrating for everybody. I mean, I think that that boat has now become famous, one, for safety, but also as an attraction. But really and truly, it has to move because it does pose a long-term threat. We are working on it. That's the short story of it all. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister Gomes, and thank you, Emil. I would allow Jacqueline this final question. However, we are at our time, so if I cut you off, you know why. Go ahead.
To the Minister of Justice. There was recently an incident involving a Canadian celebrity and his wife who filed a complaint about police brutality. What is the reason the complaints about of the conduct of police still go to internal affairs? What is the status of the police committee for against brutality that was installed a few years ago based on the law?
Yeah, I'm actually looking into how we're utilizing that committee because funny enough to me, I also got a report from them recently for the first quarter of the year telling me no complaints were received, and yet we're paying money to people to sit in committees that aren't actually producing anything. So that I'm looking to see at how we can work together more closely on that. At the same time, the police also have an obligation. They have an internal affairs department. If a person complains to the police, they also have to pick that up. They don't have any obligation to have to send it through to the committee. So, we recently had a complaint from someone that sent a complaint directly to the chief. And what we did is that complaint was investigated by internal affairs, picked up. And then what we did was, I advised, let's add if the person is, not in agreement with the outcome of the investigation from the police, that person still has a trajectory that they can also go to this independent committee if they don't trust on what came out of the police. But going forward, we are trying to look at how we can work more effectively and efficiently between internal affairs and this external body, and in line with also advices from the Raad voor de Rechtshandhaving and of course the legislation that committee is based on. But from what I understand in the past too, even when that there wasn't much of an added value, a lot of times when the committee received the complaint, they still have to go to the police to get the information, or that they didn't find anything additional to what the police investigation had revealed. But we are going to look and see how we can more effectively deal with these complaints and both institutions.
Thank you, Minister Tacklin. Thank you, members of the media. Any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel, Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Government of St. Martin and the Department of Communication, I am Relaika Roach and wish